Hello, everyone. I remind you that Philippe Couve is a great name for citizen journalists. He has collaborated with Ziad Malouf, and so I am very happy to see him again here. I would like to thank you all for your presence here to this workshop where we're going to follow on from the debate which has just taken place earlier, which was truly great, and which was about how to improve blogging, free expression, traditional media, not just here in France or in Western Europe, but especially in countries of the South, countries which are now becoming more important, because I believe that innovation is coming from the South. So I will now represent Global Voice, which has been since 2004 one of the precursors of surveillance sites for blogs and social media, and this now is 30 years old. Some of them are not so well known, Maya, the Khmer, and it still has the same objective, to be a bridge between cultures and people, and it has followed a lot of projects over the last 10 years, as we are now going to be celebrating the 10th anniversary. So now for this workshop, where there will be plenty of interaction, and don't hesitate to ask questions, I would like to introduce you to our two guests, Dina El Hawar, who comes from Cairo and who is in charge of a beautiful project called Meedan. Meedan is a feed of Global Voice. It tries to create links between the English-speaking and Arab-speaking blogs by translating them. And over the years, it has led some interesting projects in order to train and professionalize bloggers who have played a role which we are now all aware of on the 25th of January on Tahrir Square. Now we have Johnny. He is a celebrity from Central African Republic. This is, of course, a country, not a region of the world. And he is a very active blogger. He is a radio journalist in his country, and he is going to talk about social media in terms of what they represent. Often there is a fear that these media will manipulate and take over, as was mentioned in the previous debate. So here we have a representative of the integration of bloggers in the creation of information. He started a long time ago, and he's now in an interesting phase of being integrated into media. And Johnny is someone for whom, like we heard from Algeria earlier, is something which is synonymous with freedom, to give a space for people who would never be heard if these social media did not exist. So I will start with Dina and ask her about her experience in Meedan. And her experience is in creation of news rather than media. And so why have you created what you have created, i.e. the chat desks?
Doesn't work. Hello? Hello? Okay. So, hello everybody. Thanks, Claire, for the introduction. Okay, so I am Dina El Hawari. I am a program manager in Meedan, and Meedan is a non-profit social technology company, and we are providing software and technologies with motives and objectives to forward cross-cultural technologies and multilingual web. So Meedan have different expertise in education fields, media fields, and interfaith fields as well. And we are based in San Francisco. And actually, the word Meedan it's an Arabic word, means square. And square is the place where people gather and meet and exchange ideas. So this is how the name came, because when we were working on multilingual web, we always focused on our first focus was Arabic and English so far. So I'm here today to present Check Desk, which is a Meedan product that comes under a project called Developing Citizen Journalism in the Middle East. So what is Check Desk? I would like to play you a video instead of talking too much, so it will explain exactly what's the idea of Check Desk and how it works. So Noor, if you can help us play the video, and then I will elaborate more. I think you're muting, Noor. Okay. No, it worked when I tried it, but just take the mute icon.
Attention. By fact-checking citizen media, you can help stop dangerous rumors and make sure public figures are held to account.
We see it's a professional. Nous voyons que c'est une tentative.
We can see that this is an attempt to professionalize this area, and this highlights the importance and also the harm created by rumors on social networks. So perhaps you can explain to us how, in Meedan, you train these bloggers and how they can be trained for fact-checking.
The idea behind Check Desk is getting social media into professional newsroom and creating this cooperation and collaboration between professional media and citizen journalists using the normal social media platforms. So what happens that Check Desk is a tool that any newsroom can use, and in order to gather reports from different portals like YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, and different other websites and blog posts. So the journalists can really find a good source of what's happening in the web sphere without being onboarded with a lot of noise and media and maybe news that he is not really following or focusing on. And then the journalists is when they get excited with one of the reports, they can simply use it in any of the reports they're creating on the updates, journalistic updates created on the platform, and then adding another layer of fact checking on this reports coming from the citizens. So the reports are opened by the journalist for fact checking, and other citizens are encouraged to add annotations and curation to these reports, helping the journalist to fact check it and verify it or deny it, or even say it's impossible to prove, for example. So the end result, when a normal user is checking the news portal and finding reports coming from the citizen media, he can simply know the status of this report, whether it's verified or unable to confirm, or if it's not correct at all. So it helps, of course, less the rumors coming from social media, and it's encouraging people, normal citizens, to add this professionalism to the media that are creating, being on the street and trying to be reporters from everywhere. And beside the technology we have developed, we are implementing this project in the help of our media partners in the region. So in Egypt, we are working with El Masri Al-Yom and Wilad Al-Balad, and in Jordan, we are working with Hawar. In Lebanon, we are working with SMEX and Nahar Al-Shabab, and in Palestine, we're working with Ma'an. And in Syria, we are working with Shabab Al-Ayyam, Shabab Syria. So all these partners are helping us implementing the project by using it for creating content and publishing, and also training 1,000 plus citizen journalists around the region for more professional journalistic skills and the basis of fact-checking, and also how to use the platform itself. So this is the whole experience of our project of developing citizen journalism in the region. So it's partially technology and partially training.
We can see that since social media had so much importance in the Middle East, it's a very mature project, right? It's knowing that you have rumors. It's knowing that not everything is true. It sounds like a very mature project, and I'm sure question, from the audience will allow you to explain more in details. Right now, I would like to introduce Johnny. And I would like him to introduce, because Johnny is at the other end of the spectrum of social media in a country with very little access to internet, but where he says, and Facebook is causing a stir, and there's a huge explosion of users in Centrafrique. Right. Ah, pardon, je vais commencer à parler en anglais. Excusez-moi.
I'm sorry, I've just started speaking in English.
Excusez-moi. Donc, Johnny, lui,
So Johnny,
la première chose qu'il m'a dit,
the first thing that he told me is that he comes from a Central African Republic, and the first thing he told me is that Facebook is creating an explosion in Central African Republic. Why? Because we are beginning to get the feel of freedom, the taste of freedom that these social media can bring. Like in 2006, 2007, we saw in Egypt, where it was the only space for expression. He is therefore going to give us a few words about his experience, so his blog, his activism, and his Mondeblog from RFI in Central Africa.
Bonjour à tous. En fait,
Good morning, everyone. Claire has in fact already said everything.
Je suis journaliste de radio.
I am a radio journalist, and in my country, the most widespread media is the radio. It's the only one that everyone can listen to, that everyone can have access to. People who don't have the money to buy a newspaper, although the daily newspapers are publish numbers of about 300, and they are bought by a minority of privileged people who are either civil servants or other wealthy people. So today what we are seeing is a more important phenomenon, especially social media, notably Facebook, which is creating an explosion. Young people are often using it to flirt, but what we are also seeing is that Facebook is being used to communicate and to give news flashes. So it's becoming a means for spreading information. There are very few bloggers. I have tried to pool the bloggers in Central African Republic, and there are only 5 of us. I have a double experience. In the radio station where I work, there is very little room for information which is close to the ground. Radios are more interested in institutional information and treaties signed between states, for example. But the local populations need to hear about their own problems, their own situation, and there no one is better placed to make their voices heard than people who live within those populations, i.e. citizen journalists or bloggers. There are some very isolated regions of the country, and sometimes we hear about them every now and again when there is a major event taking place there. However, this information tends to get suffocated in the newsrooms. Those populations need to hear about matters which are relevant to them, and that is the whole importance of bloggers. In my country, there are people who publish links from sites on their Facebook page. It's easier for a young person to click on an exciting title and go and look at that web page than it is to turn on the radio and listen to news. So thanks to the internet, we can have an impact on more people. So the web is playing a central role. Today in Central Africa, we have politicians who are trying to appeal to their electors by having a Facebook page. So it's being used as a propaganda tool. And populations can also grab hold of this tool and make it into a tool for activism and defense of their rights. I was already a blogger in 2006, and I've been present on my blog platform since 2010. And my experience with my blog is that everything that we can read from different countries across the planet, which you don't read in the conventional media, this is a news seen by citizens who are not necessarily journalists. They can be students, they can be doctors, they can be anyone. They are people who are publishing information which you don't necessarily find in the conventional media. And I would say that the Mondo blog summarizes all of the world news as it is reported by citizens. And if we listen to those voices, that's when we can be of service to those populations, because in countries like my own, where there is the presence of humanitarian organizations, NGOs, they are not necessarily aware of the real problems of the local populations. They arrive with their preconceived ideas, which they formulated in their offices in their home country. They and then act in ways which don't necessarily answer the needs of the local populations. Here's an example: people who arrive and who decide to build a camp for a nomad tribe. And to build latrines for a nomadic tribe. But seeing as this is a nomadic tribe, what are these latrines going to be used for? And so actually this kind of aberrant situation can be reported by local bloggers. So these blogs are a real mine for information and news for news teams. I have sometimes been able to suggest subjects to my newsroom team from things which were inspired to me on the blogs. For example, the proliferation of religious cult preachers. And this is something which was reported by a citizen who is living this experience in his part of town. When you start to talk about it, you realize that this actually interests people. The other point is that there are subjects which are simply pushed aside by news teams. I, for example, suggested a discussion for my program on homophobia. But I met with the categoric refusal to approach this topic. My whole news team said that this is a debate only for white people, that it's not a problem in our country. If we were talking about homophobia, it's like trying to normalize a practice which in our country is considered to be a horror. But the truth is that homosexuality exists in Central African Republic, and it is normal that it should be a subject which makes people talk everywhere. And thanks to social media and blogs, we are giving people the opportunity to make their voices heard on this subject. I could also add the fact that in countries like my own, where there are limited resources and journalists are not necessarily present at the time and place where an event is happening, thanks to citizens, we are able to record some events. For example, France 24 has been able to take up some of the videos filmed by some ordinary citizens. And therefore, the work done by citizen journalists and by journalists are mutually complementary. What I would also like to add, because I have followed the previous debates, is the facts and opinions. I believe that
les blogueurs qui se contentent de donner des faits.
When we look at bloggers who just give facts, they are less interesting than those people who are analytical.
Ça devient plus intéressant de dire, de donner des
Things become
témoignages.
more
Les gens se sont
interesting
fatigués
when
d'écouter les
there is an opinion
qui
given.
interviennent tout le temps dans les
People are
médias
often tired of
traditionnels, soit,
listening to the
pour
ordinary opinion
expliquer
makers
ou pour
in
dire des
conventional
choses.
media
Les gens
who
ont
always
besoin
say the
souvent
same
qu'on
thing.
leur raconte,
Often people
qu'on leur
need
fasse
to
des
be
récits, des témoins
told
oculaires, des gens
stories
qui font
and
leurs propres
eyewitness
analyses de la
accounts,
situation qu'ils ont vécue
people
dans leur
who
chair en tant que citoyens.
give an account of
Ça
something
n'est
that they have
souvent
actually
aucune
lived
ligne
through
éditoriale, parce que
personally.
dans les rédactions, on le sait tous,
And
l'information est
of course,
filtrée,
they know
on
that when
évite
information
de-
goes through a news team, information
on
gets
évite ce qui fâche.
filtered and
Et à ce moment,
topics which
on peut
could
être
cause
complémentaire
discussion are
sans pour
avoided.
autant
And so we
marcher
could be
sur,
complementary
parce qu'il y a des
without,
journalistes
of course,
justement qui
treading on
sont-
other
et
people's
ça, c'est une
toes.
question
Of
aujourd'hui
course,
dans la salle. Est-ce que donner de l'information est-il l'apanage
as
des
we could say,
journalistes
is
et que,
giving
un
out
citoyen,
information
s'il n'est pas
the
journaliste, n'a pas le
monopoly
droit de
of
s'exprimer sur une
journalism,
question qui le
and
touche
are
particulièrement.
citizens not allowed
Je
to
pense qu'il n'y a
express
pas
themselves on
conflit
a
à ce
topic
niveau
which
si
interests
chacun
them?
essaie
And actually, I don't think that we enter into this debate if each person tries to play their role. So we want to make the public, the listener, the reader, the center of our work. Johnny has just given us a lot of information, and we can see that for many countries, blogs are vital, first of all, to create information which is otherwise inexistent, for example, local news, but also to create a space for freedom which doesn't necessarily exist in a conventional media for lots of reasons, or sometimes in other social media for lots of reasons. And then also to be able to express the real claims, the real opinions, the real requests. Often the conventional media don't address the subjects which actually are relevant to real people in their everyday lives. And he also reminded us that the tool for journalists and bloggers in many countries is just a paper and pen. At a time when in Africa and also many countries are suffering from electricity cuts all the time. So electricity is becoming a real problem that makes communication a real problem. So then you are left with very little means to spread information. You just end up with a mobile phone. But nevertheless, we can use a mobile phone to spread information. So there are means which emerge confronted with difficulties with the electricity or due to censorship. And now, Dina, as you have a long experience of social media and you have used them to connect people at a time when Egypt and other countries of the Middle East found it difficult to be heard. No one thought that there would be an Arab Spring. No one thought there would be a revolution. And yet there were bloggers who were already talking about this, and there were media who were aware of these blogs, but they hadn't integrated them as a real voice, a real participant to information. What is the situation now from your experience? Do you think that the media in the Middle East are now more open? Is it a collaboration, or is who just cracked the door open to let a few citizen bloggers enter, but actually it's fairly selective and fairly restrictive, as has often been blamed?
So I can give my impressions on what you're asking, Claire, but I mean that professional media now are in a state where they can't ignore or the importance of social media or not listen to it or take from it as well. So it's becoming a dominant source somehow, and I think none of the professional media can just ignore this, so they have to work with it somehow. I can't claim that the relation is that good between professional media and citizen media or social media, and I would say it comes from both sides. Like, as professional media sometimes are skeptic about the credibility, for example, coming from social media and how they're gonna use it or how technological they are, for example, something like this. Also, from the citizen journalist side, we hear some reluctant voices that says things like, we can depend on our normal porters, for example. We don't really find an importance in collaboration with the professional media because there are some oppressing content and publishing ideologies for them, for example, and they want to have their own voices said in their own language or their own way. And this is something that is really provided in normal social media platforms. So I can't say that it's really a love-love relation. No, it's not. But there are some ways of collaboration, and people from both sides are tuning to the importance of working together. And slowly things are getting better, I think.
So you would say that right now this year is a testing ground, a testing period?
More than this, I mean, the testing period started years ago and things like this.
Okay.
So.
Now we see that Noor is, sort of signaling this is the end of the CV and the resume of our two invités. Pardon. Et que maintenant les questions sont à la salle.
And now it is up to the room to ask questions. There are quite a few people who've raised their hands, actually, who would like to ask questions to those two witnesses with very different experiences at both ends of the spectrum of social media and blogs. And good morning. Thank you very much. Two questions. Mrs. Dina, you said at the beginning that information comes to the newsrooms. The first thing you wanted to do was to check those information. Now, how can you check all of that on site? Especially so because when you work in a newsroom, there aren't that many people working in a newsroom. We're talking about Arab countries, we're talking about the Middle East, and you have limited resources. So that's the first question. And then, what is the information that is priority information for newsrooms? Because sometimes people are exaggerating. People talk about a same event, and they give more importance to demonstrations or protest movements, and sometimes those information cast a shadow on other very important information. So it's become very fashionable to talk about demonstration when there are other very serious problems that tend to be forgotten. And then the second question was for you, Jean-René. You work with social media. You can't see it because I'm talking about what happens in Africa, but I mean elsewhere maybe it's quite different. But working with those networks means that there might be an excess of virtuality. In other words, people don't react on site, they talk about their own little problems. Is the idea talking about people's problems, or actually have closer ties between decision makers and citizens and finding a solution? Because there are true problems that are out there and that need to be taken into account. And sometimes journalists feel like the contribution of social networks is low-cost information because you don't need to move. I have pictures, I have information, that's it, and it's enough.
Okay, thanks for your question. So the first thing, you were speaking about limited resources in newsrooms in our region. So the platform is open for public use. I mean, all what you want to do is just have an account, a free account. So it's open for all the people and citizens to add interesting reports they see on the normal social media, to add it to this check desk platform where the professional journalist can see it. So the media organization can depend on its own journalists, staff, and also in other citizens who are using the platform. So here comes the challenge of the professional media organization to create a community around this check desk. So they have like loyal people, loyal citizens willing to help them and add interesting news to them. Mm-hmm. So this is to answer your first question. For the second question, the priorities, so far with the check desk, the reports are being added manually through even adding the link itself, or using bookmarklet that we have. We can install it on your browser. So it's still a personal action to do it. people will find, I mean, important and hot events force themselves at the end. So whatever is happening and a really hot topic, it will come on top of other things. But what we are trying to do that for the journalists, instead of having a Twitter page that is just updating like crazy every second, no, they have another separate aggregator where some kind of filtering is happening on important news. So it's not like important news and personal news and social impressions and so on. No, it's more news. Okay, maybe later on in more developments in check this, we can do more technological ideas in our roadmap, like maybe linking to hashtags, for example, or linking to certain users. This is still not very clear in our plan, but maybe these are things we can work on later, I think.
Il faut se rappeler que Meedan ne fait pas simplement ce travail de formation.
You don't just do training work, but you also do translation, non-stop translation work. And this is something you need to realize. For foreign listeners or viewers, it's very important to see or to get access to those news if you don't speak Arabic. Did you want to ask a question? Or answer the question, rather? Well, I would say that there are two concerns. The first one is low-cost information, as you called it. The fact that journalists, newsrooms, traditional media just stay in their newsrooms and they use images coming from citizen journalists and they don't do their job at the end of the day. Well, I believe that you need to contextualize things. I'm talking about this Central African context. That's my environment. That's the area I know. In my country, the radio is the number one media. People listen to the radio. The problem with the radio is that it is an FM radio and it will be heard in a very limited space, which is very well determined. And quite often, we can't cover the 16 districts of our country, and we would need correspondence. If something happens, we can have a journalist on site. So, and we can't have a journalist on site. So, is it a sin to actually use the pictures of somebody who is on site and who could actually immortalize that scene and take a picture? Not doing it would be preventing people from having access to information, rather. So I think we should do it. And journalists have to look for cross information and report it and put it at the disposal of the audience. And their job, that's their job. It's making sure that this information is available for all. And so journalists indeed should try and gather information here and there, cross information, and ensure that it's available for the audience. Now, what was the second question? I can't remember. The virtuality of things. Well, yesterday I was saying that the internet was not virtual, after all, when you think about it. Because this is something I came to realize a couple of months ago. I was in Dakar and I met 52 bloggers that I exchanged with on Twitter, on the internet. But these guys I met face to face, in flesh, and we had exactly the same discussions we had on the internet. And so there's nothing virtual about the internet when you think about it. These guys go through real situations and they can make testimonies, and the media is an information channel. It's just like when talking on the radio about something you lived the day before. Of course, the radio is not just to talk about yourself, but I mean, the internet is not virtual. There's nothing virtual about the internet. It's not fiction. It's not novels that people write on the internet, but it's information, real information, something we've lived in our flesh. And so and then there is the idea of subjectivity, of course. It might be biased, but that's another debate. Hello. Back to the relationship between the blogger and the journalists. Can you hear me? I just wanted to react to the relation between bloggers and journalists. I'm a journalist at africa.com based in Paris. This relationship between journalists and bloggers, the question, can we actually consider bloggers as journalists? Based on my experience, when I go for a job interview as a blogger, I was very committed politically, etc. And on my job interview, I was told that when you have a blog, we know your position, but when you are a journalist, you're supposed to be neutral in the way you report the information. And the blogger has more freedom than the journalist. He can say whatever he thinks, whatever he wants, when a journalist is governed by standards, by an editorial position, and so it's two fully different approaches. And so should bloggers be seen as journalists, given that bloggers are free and can say whatever they want when journalists cannot? That's a debate we've had since 2006. It's a very old debate, a very exciting debate, I have to say. Now, is there anything you would like to say on that? There are different contexts, of course. There are different points of views on that. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes half, sometimes fully, sometimes maybe. So it depends. Dina, did you want to react to this question? Is this a debate you also have in Meedan or in the media with which you work?
We know this debate, of course, and as I said, like earlier, that we always hear the reluctance coming also from the activists, from the citizen journalists themselves. So I agree to what you are saying. I totally understand. But I think that bloggers and citizen journalists were really strong enough to force themselves on the scene. So I think that, as I said, professional media has no option not to use bloggers to get benefits and use the resources coming from bloggers and citizen journalists. So it will happen, I think, later on even.
D'autres questions? Oui, il y en a beaucoup de mains qui se lèvent au fond de la salle.
Another question? Who's next?
Bonjour, monsieur.
Right, so before asking my question to our friends from Egypt and Central Africa. Oh yes, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm the editor of Vianney, which means forum, published in Paris, but we work with blogs in Vietnam, Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh. So before asking a question to our friends coming from Central Africa and Egypt, I just wanted to react and say something about the situation in Vietnam concerning this issue of virtuality. In Vietnam, the situation is a bit different, because apart from TV and the official radio, there are 700 print newspapers with associated websites, and they're all controlled by the authorities. All editors have to be members of the party, and there is censorship everywhere. And whenever there are spontaneous demonstrations against China, or whatever they do in the country, the radio, the TV officially give no information on that. They might be press releases to actually accuse people of troubling the public order. So virtuality is more on the side of the official press than of the internet press, and it's the internet press that actually reestablishes reality. There's nothing virtual about what you see on the internet. It's just a very complicated situation, is what I mean. I mean, there's, depending on the level of equipment of the countries, depending on the political situation of the country, I mean, things change greatly. And so you can't generalize on that, because I think it's you have very different situations. It might be favorable one day, or positive one day, negative the second day, black and white, you know. So I would like to ask a question also. In Vietnam, bloggers have two things to do. They have to build a civil society, and they have to build an independent press. But the question I'm asking to our African colleagues is the following, is the question of immediacy. Immediacy. Two examples. Last December, there was a demonstration in Saigon, and a poet, a former fighter, a veteran, sent on his mobile phone, was sent information hiding in a cafe, and a blog gave the information, and 2 minutes later the cops came and took him to the police station. Second example, that's been the case in Vietnam. For 18 days, a lawyer trained in Paris, who is the son of a founder of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, is now in jail, and he's been on hunger strike for 18 days. Other bloggers have started a hunger strike out of solidarity, but they can't do it in the Republic. And today they are starting to publish these names. So you have the responsibility of the press in the immediacy. When should we give the information? When should we retain the information? Well, we know that Vietnamese bloggers pay a very heavy price. More questions to the back of the room, I think.
Bonjour.
Yes, hello.
I'm from Cambodia. And I'm just asking for the advice from the panelists, the expert, that should a media organization employ blogger to have, and why not?
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
Should a media organization employ bloggers to have for the article and
Employ
bloggers? Yeah, why and why not? Just for your advice. Thank you.
I can't really advise. I'm not in their situation. I don't work for a media organization at the end. But I think there are more expert people who can answer this question and, better than me. But if you are asking about a personal point of view, I think yes. Why not? But maybe they can even give them like a different situation in the organization, different work or type of journalistic work. But I think they worth to be heard somehow. This is my personal opinion. I'm not sure what other professional media people will think. But,
Sur cette question, je n'ai pas un avis de spécialiste.
I'm not an expert either, but I can give you my personal point of view. I think you can start from a blog and actually move up and develop something. It's a bit like in the traditional media. You have a general information media organization. You have specialized media organizations specializing in sports, economics, politics, or whatever. Now, if you have a blog talking about philosophy, cooking, therapy, maybe you won't have a very loyal target group of readers. There are people who started from scratch and who are now specialized. We have consultants on TV channels in sports who've never studied journalism, but who are still journalists. But now to become a carpenter, you need to learn your job, your trade, don't you? But I have no clear idea. I don't quite know, to be honest. We'll take the one or two questions. So there are. We just listen to the questions and put them on Twitter, because otherwise if we keep answering, because you can continue the debate more informally during the break. Thank you very much to all of you, to all panelists. It doesn't mean that it's the end of this debate, because there will be a lot of time before the previous workshop starting at 12:30, and we'll have a longer break, which means that we can keep exchanging with the panelists. And we have this recurring question, indeed. Journalists, bloggers, etc. I can't see why we still ask ourselves that question, because bloggers don't want to become journalists anyway. Some of them maybe, but I mean, it's a very small number of them anyway. It's not their concern. So I don't understand why people actually why journalists are so nervous about this issue when bloggers certainly don't want to take that position and don't want to steal their jobs anyway. So there's no competition really. Anyway, thank you very much for